Alan Mullery. He didn't lead with flair. He led with force. Not a dancer, not a dreamer, just the first into the fire and the last to walk off. He wasn't the fans' favorite. He wasn't the face on the posters. But when the match turned to war, they all followed him. No slogans, no shine, just the silence of a man who knew what mattered. He wore the armband like it came with bruises. He held the midfield like it owed him something. He didn't chase headlines. He carried teams. No chant, no statue. But every team he touched remembered. Alan Mullery. He didn't lift the badge to the crowd. He wore it like it was carved into him. Subscribe if you still believe football should honor the ones who led with scars, not slogans. Notting Hill, 1941. Air raids, blackouts, ration books. He was born into grit. The streets didn't raise artists, they raised fighters. At Fulham, they saw it fast. No flash, no fuss. Just a teenager who didn't blink. At 17, he was in the first team. He debuted for Fulham in 1958, tackling men twice his size, running midfield battles like a veteran. By 20, he was Fulham's spine. Johnny Haynes ran the show. But Mullery ran the war. The passes might have gone through Haynes, but the ball stayed in Fulham's hands because Mullery won it back. 7 seasons, 199 league appearances. A boy became a constant. He didn't shine. He stayed. And sometimes that's the harder thing. By 1964, they couldn't hold him. Spurs came knocking, and Fulham let go for £72,500 because some men outgrow even the clubs that made them. Tottenham didn't need a star. They needed a spine. And in 1964, they found one. He made his Spurs debut that year and never looked back. £72,500, the highest fee they'd ever paid, because Bill Nicholson saw it. He didn't see flash, he saw fire. Mullery came to White Hart Lane not to replace heroes, but to carry what they left behind. No fear, no flinch. He stepped into the center like it already belonged to him. He wasn't Mackay. He wasn't Blanchflower. He was something colder, harder, more enduring. He didn't lift the ball forward. He drove it. He didn't demand the armband. He earned it one collision at a time. Even Bill Nicholson said it himself. Alan was a manager's dream. He never needed telling twice. A captain other players trusted without needing to shout. He wasn't there to be inspired. He was there to set the tone. Spurs fans didn't chant his name, but they watched and they remembered. Because some players entertain and others hold the whole thing together. FA Cup, 1967. He wasn't the flair. He was the fight. Final at Wembley. Chelsea's Osgood ran the line, but Mullery ran the war, his tackle swinging a 2-1 win. He held the line, so others could play. League Cup, 1971. Same story, same bruises, same steel. Spurs beat Aston Villa 2-0, and Mullery carried the weight. He didn't lift silver for the camera. He lifted it because someone had to carry the weight. 373 appearances for Spurs in all competitions, 25 goals. But that's not how you measure Mullery. You measure him in grit, in presence, in how safe a back four felt when he stood ahead of them. He wasn't Mackay's fire. He wasn't Blanchflower's silk. He was Nicholson's constant. When others faded, Mullery remained. He wore the armband like it was armor. Heavy, earned, respected, no speeches, no spotlight. Just one man making sure 10 others never fell alone. He didn't become a captain. He already was one. 1972, the UEFA Cup Final. Spurs won 3-2 on aggregate 2-1 in the first leg, 1-1 in the second. Tottenham versus Wolves. English versus English, but on a European stage. 2 legs, no mercy. Mullery, outmuscling Wolves' Dugan, set up Chivers' first leg brace. He didn't blink. He captained Spurs through it all. The tackles, the fouls, the weight of history. And when it was done, when the war was over, he stood at Molyneux with the trophy in hand. No leap, no scream, just a face that had earned every inch. He became the first English captain to lift the UEFA Cup. But even then, he didn't make it about himself. He lifted it for Nicholson, for the lads, for the badge, He played every game like it was his last, and every European night felt like a debt being repaid in blood, sweat, and boots. They remember the scorers, but Mullery was the reason they got there, holding the middle, breaking attacks, rising in silence while others crumbled in noise. That was his stage. That was his reward. Not fame, not fuss. Just a night in Wolverhampton where a man carried a club to continental glory and walked away without asking for applause. 35 caps. In an era when England didn't hand them out lightly. Jimmy Greaves once said, "Alan did the dirty work so we could shine." He earned each one the hard way. Not the darling, not the genius, but the one who did the dirty work with pride. 1968, Yugoslavia. He becomes the first England player ever sent off. A moment of heat, a scar that stuck. They called it shame, he called it a lesson. The game called it unforgettable. He didn't run, he returned. 2 years later, 1970 World Cup. Quarter-final, West Germany. Bobby Charlton off, Beckenbauer rising, England wobbling. Mullery drove into the box and scored his only England goal, holding his own in a team of giants like Bobby Moore and Geoff Hurst. Finishes it like a striker. England 2-0. It should have sealed it. It didn't. Germany came back, winning 3-2 in extra time. England fell. But that goal? It echoed, not because it won the game, but because it came from a man they once tried to forget. Redemption, in white. On the world's biggest stage, he never wore the captain's band for England, but he carried the weight anyway, like he always did. 1972. He leaves Spurs, not with a parade, not with tears, just a handshake in a locker emptied by a man who gave everything. He was 31, could have faded, could have taken a payday, but he went back. Back at Craven Cottage from 1972 to 1976, he didn't coast. Across 2 spells, Mullery made 364 appearances for Fulham, 199 in the first, 165 in the second. Johnny Haynes once said, "Alan was our engine, always fighting for Fulham." They were no longer top flight, no silver on the horizon. In 1976, he was awarded the MBE for services to football, a quiet medal for a quiet warrior. But Mullery didn't come for that. He came because Fulham needed a spine again. He gave them everything he had left, every tackle, every shout, every minute his legs could still give. 1975 UEFA Cup Final. Fulham, against all odds, reach Wembley. They faced West Ham's Steel, a side that included Billy Bonds and Alan Taylor, and lost 2-0 at Wembley, but with a 33-year-old Mullery at the heart, the crowd stood in respect. They lost that day. But something deeper was won. Because when the whistle blew and the dust cleared, the crowd stood. Not for the score, for the man. He didn't need the trophy. He had the love. Mullery retired from playing in 1976 after nearly 2 decades of leaving boots and bruises on every pitch. Retirement didn't quiet him. It redirected him. He went to the dugout Brighton and Hove Albion, took them up into the First Division. He took charge of Brighton in 1976, and by 1979 led them to the First Division for the first time in club history. He stayed until 1981. No miracles, just management the hard way. Then QPR Charlton, Crystal Palace. Brighton, 1976 to 1981. Charlton, 1982 to 1983. Crystal Palace, 1982 and 1984. QPR, 1984 to 1985. And a final return to Brighton in 1986 to 1987. He never got the big job. But that wasn't the point. He coached like he played with sleeves rolled up and eyes sharp. Later, the cameras came calling. He became a regular on BBC and ITV panels, known for calling out modern softness in the game. And Mullery? He never played the pundit. He spoke like the game still lived under his skin. Sharp, director. Unpolished but always honest. No metaphors, no nostalgia, just truth from someone who'd been there when boots were heavy and pitches froze solid. In a sport growing slicker by the year, he remained rough, real, respected. There's no statue of Alan Mullery outside White Hart Lane, No stand in his name, no mural in Fulham. But ask the ones who watched. Ask the men who played beside him. Ask the coaches who trusted him when games got ugly. They'll tell you he was there when it mattered most. Once, on BBC, he scoffed at overpaid stars. They'd never last on our frozen pitches. When the glamour cracked, when the knees buckled, when the season tilted toward collapse, Mullery stood up. Not for glory, not for legacy, but because that's what real players do. He didn't ask for applause, he asked for the next fixture. Martin Chivers once said, "Alan was our rock when the game got ugly." And on X, fans still write, "Mullery was our unsung hero, never needed a statue." England, Spurs, Fulham, 3 shirts, 1 identity, built on fight, held together by loyalty. In the end, he may not have the monuments, but he has something rarer. Nearly 700 battles across 3 shirts, Fulham, Spurs, and England, all stitched together by loyalty. The respect of every dressing room he ever walked into. And that, you can't carve in stone. You can only leave it in the memory of the game. Subscribe, because stories like Alan Mullery's don't get told unless we tell them together.